Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. Class 2 of leadership. And today we're going to be focusing primarily on Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, right? And there's going to be some, of course, similarities in between, Moshe and Abraham, because, of course, as being leaders, there's different similar qualities from one leader to the other leader. But there's certain things that come out from Moshe that we might not have seen from Abraham. And then, of course, some new tips and new things to learn from Moshe that we didn't bring out and we didn't see that directly from Abraham Avinu. So I wanna home in the beginning of who Moshe was. Right? And this is, again, as I mentioned last time, one of the fundamental things of a leader, and this is so important to remember, is a sensitivity for others. Thinking about other people. And this we're going to see, and I'm going to prove in every leader where we see this unbelievable level of sensitivity that we don't find by just regular people. And that what really made them the greatest leaders that of their caliber, right, is the more sensitivity they have for other people. So we proved it by Abraham Avinu, and now we're going to go ahead and show it by Moshe Rabbeinu. Even before we start talking about Moshe and some of the leadership of Moshe, first and foremost, we have to show as we said, one of the fundamental ideas of a leader is a sensitivity for other people. So where do we find this level of sensitivity by Moshe that we find by Abraham, but where do we find it by Moshe? So the verse says the first time really Moshe is being introduced in the Torah, right? And from then on, you won't find a paragraph in the Torah that doesn't have Moshe's name, except for one parsha, of course, that doesn't have his name, which maybe we'll talk about, just part of Moshe's leadership. Right? But otherwise, since from that point on, you don't really find Moshe's name not being mentioned. But what's the first story that the Torah teaches us about Moshe himself? The verse says like this: he went out to his brothers and he saw their pain. Now let's take a step back for a second. Moshe Rabbeinu, right, when he went out, where did he go out from? He didn't go out from his, little shtetl, right, his little Jewish community. He didn't go out from, his base measures at his synagogue or his study hall that he just came from. Moshe Rabbeinu came out from Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh's house, Paro. He was a prince, Moshe. Moshe was like a prince. He had everything that needed. He had everything that he wanted. He was considered a prince. He was adopted by Basia. So when it says that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Rabbeinu went out, Moshe went out, he went out from the palace. He went out from having everything. He went out from all the luxuries and without any cure of concern at all about anything. And it says Vayar b'sivlosim. He went out. Where did he go out? He didn't go out to the malls. He didn't go out to society. He went out b'sivlosim. He went to see his brother's pain. And the Midrash takes it a step further. The Midrash says that Moshe Rabbeinu saw a child, right, overtaking a child doing a man's labor, and vice versa. He was so overtaken that he couldn't handle it anymore, right? He couldn't handle it anymore, and he had to go and help them. He had to go and try to help them in whatever way he can. The Midrash says that God said, the Holy One blessed be, he said, right, you Moshe, right, who put yourself aside, right, of your own affairs, your own things, and you went and you shared in the suffering of the Jewish people. Those are the words of the Midrash, right? And acted like their brother. Therefore, I will put aside the high and the low worlds to speak only to you. Moshe Rabbeinu merited to have a conversation and to talk to God, the highest level of prophecy. Ain't Kamoni, there's no one else like Moshe. The highest level of prophecy, the leader of the Jewish people who took the Jewish people out of Egypt. What was the merit? Because he put himself aside and he went to see the brother suffer. He had that sensitivity, he had that concern. There's so many things to learn just from this story itself. Number one, and this I think is one of the most important things, leadership, humanity, our core of Judaism. One of the most important things that we have to remember, Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, Vayetze el Achav, he went out to his brothers. Moshe Rabbeinu identified himself as that they're my brothers. Not the people in the palace, not everybody else who have been taking care of him and all the luxuries. Moshe Rabbeinu was willing to put aside the luxuries, society, right? All the wonderful things that come with it. He was willing to put that all aside just to go see the pain of his brothers and to feel their pain. That is a tremendous lesson that we have to reflect on and to think about. That we have to remember who we are. When we have so many other things out there and we want to be part of this group, we want to be part of that group, and we want to be able to go to the opera, we want to be able to go to sports, whatever it is that makes you, we want to be able to be invited to certain country clubs, or we want to be able to be part of certain businesses. We can't remember who we are. We are Jews. We are brothers. And we can't ever forget that. And if we have to skip a business meeting, or we have to skip something because we have to make sure that the Jewish people are being taken care of, we have to go ahead and feel the pain of someone else. But Moshe went out of the luxuries. He went to the trenches, right? He went to the slave labor. That's one important lesson. But that's also a leader. A leader is willing to get his hands dirty. Number one, we see from here, first of all, Moshe's sensitivity, as we said, that is the core, the underlining thing that one has to remember, right? That what's it called again? Regarding the being a leader, right? As we mentioned, and we saw that Avram, we see that here. But another thing, and another important lesson to learn. Moshe Rabbeinu is willing to get his hands dirty. A leader can't be sitting up here and say, okay, I'm the leader, you guys take care of it. Let's figure this out, send out whatever. The leader has to be willing to get his hands dirty. Moshe Rabbeinu went out to see with his own eyes, not to listen to what other people came and told him. But a leader has to be able to see it with his own eyes, has to be able to have firsthand knowledge of a situation before he's able to make a decision. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, just as we did last class. If anybody has any questions during the class, please feel free to write a message in the text, in the chat, or on in Susan chat and on Facebook. Please write it on the comments, and I'll be more than happy to answer them during the class. After the class, I'll unmute and feel free to ask any questions you have. But back to this point, he was willing to get his hands dirty. He went out himself. And not only willing to get his hands dirty, but he realized that a leader has to have firsthand knowledge. You know, there's an unbelievable thing. It says, back into the Purim story, right? Mordechai, right? It says Mordechai heard that Bigshon and Saras had wanted the two of the ministers of Achashverosh, that they wanted to kill him. Say the commentaries, how did he know? How do you know? They were talking in Tarshish. It's a language, one of the 70 languages that's probably lost in our days. Says the Talmud, because anybody that was on the Sanhedrin, anybody who was on the great courthouse, one of the judges, had to know all the 70 languages. Because one of the laws of a judge is that he can't hear a witness through a miturgman, through a translator. Why? Why can't he hear through a translator? The answer is we see this similar concept. You have to be able to have first-hand knowledge. You have to be able to hear their words. You have to be able to actually hear their emotion and how they're saying it. That's a leader. That's a leader. That was Moshe. Rabbi Shivlosim. So from this, just from this verse itself, we see three very important things, and we'll move on from here. Number one, we see this idea of the sensitivity of Moshe. Sensitivity of Moshe, going out from his comfort zone, right? Going and feeling the pain of his brothers, right? Caring about other people, Number two, we spoke about the idea of getting his hands dirty, right? Getting into the muck, going out, feeling that pain, but more than just feeling the pain, but trying to take care of a problem, not just delegating, but being willing to be able to take care of the problem himself. And number three, we spoke about seeing firsthand, seeing the situation firsthand, realizing that a leader needs to know firsthand, can't just get, sometimes you can't, and you have to hear from other people, but you have to try to get to the bottom line, try to bring all the parties that are involved in something in front of you, to be able to hear firsthand from people before you either render a decision, or before you make a statement, or before you go ahead and put out this whole advocacy or something, whatever it is. You have to have firsthand knowledge of something, because so many times things are misunderstood or misread, or something's totally different when you actually have firsthand knowledge. So those are three important things that we spoke about regarding leadership. We mentioned another side point, right, that Moshe Rabbeinu identified himself as a Jew, right? And that's something that we always have to remember. Whatever it is, we have to identify ourselves as a Jew, right? And be willing to help our fellow brothers, right? Even when it's not the most social, they won't put me in the most social places, some business deals and things like that. We have to identify ourselves as a Jew. Let's move on. So there's this unbelievable idea. We know Moshe Rabbeinu Anami Kalada. Moshe Rabbeinu was considered the most humble man of all times. Right? Most humble man of all times. And I think we touched upon this very quickly last week. We weren't talking about Moshe. We talked about this very quickly. So what does it mean Moshe Rabbeinu was Anami Kalada? And where do we find this also in a practical application in his leadership? So there's a fascinating chapter in the Torah, one of the most mind-boggling chapters in the Torah, where the Torah spans, I don't know, 40 verses, something like that, and I have to look it up again, right? Having a dialogue in between Moshe and Hashem, right, regarding if Moshe should be the leader or should not be the leader. Moshe said, no, it's not me, send it with someone else, I'm Aaron, this, that. Can you imagine, right? God comes to you and says, hey, I want you to be the leader. You'll do these magic tricks, right? You'll take the Jewish people out. I'm on your side. You have nothing to worry about. God's on my side. Of course I'll take it. I'll get the kavod. I'll get the honor. I'm the leader. Oh, I'll take the Jewish people out. History, doing miracles, doing magic tricks. Wow. Who wouldn't want to do that? It's a foolproof leadership. God's on your side. Best president to have ever. But Moshe Rabbeinu says no. Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, someone else. So he went a little too far and God got angry at him. But the core of Moshe Rabbeinu, right, not wanting to be the leader, shows the greatest character trait of a leader. When you have someone that's jumping to be the leader, you should be very scared. It means to say that their leadership is not based on their advocacy and their community work. A lot of times their leadership, they might do a good job, but their leadership is based on boosting their own ego, getting themselves a platform of being able to push their agenda, and onwards and forwards. When you have someone that is so eager to be a leader, and is so into it and gets to whatever and tries to put himself in different situations, you have to be very scared. Very scared. David HaMelech didn't want to be a leader. We'll talk about King David. Other great leaders, we see there's a pushback a little bit. Moshe Rabbeinu pushed back. It just shows that is something that his leadership was done because God wanted him to be the leader, not because of an internal thing. And this, again, back to a very important role of a leader. A leader can't utilize his leadership for his own benefit. A leader can't think that the leadership is for me, right? To be able to get my way, to be able to get kickbacks, and to be able to this and that. A leader has to be dedicated to the cause. A leader has to be doing it because of the purpose of whatever the leadership is, and that's back to what we spoke about, the sensitivity for others. but this is a new step, a new level. You have to truly be concerned and truly be wanting to do it, not for yourself. And that's lesson number 4 from Moshe regarding leadership. And we have to always reflect on and think about it. And we all know that person that's in some level of a leadership role, right? That, you know, he's a little too eager to be the leader, right? and usually it comes out that there's a lot of things come with it, with him being the leader, right? A lot of needing to do certain things or changing certain things, because the leadership is more for himself, not for others. That's another idea that we have to think about when we talk about leadership. Now, I want to move on to and maybe we'll come back to that a little later. But I want to move on to another fascinating idea about leadership. And I think we see this, you know, tied into Moshe. And that is like this: the Altar of Kelm, right? Now, Kelm was a city in Europe. Unfortunately, some people have made jokes and used them to make fun. You know, Kelm, oh, the people that make all the funny stuff and they do all the problems. It's unfortunate. Right? Kelm actually was a city of very righteous people, and their Torah knowledge was unbelievable, and they actually worked on themselves to perfect themselves and to get closer to God. Right? So it's unfortunate, but you know, I'll be honest, I've heard some good Kelm jokes myself. Right? But the author from Kelm, the elder of Kelm, said something very powerful. He said, it's part of a paragraph, so I'll read you the paragraph. Right? For the role of a king is to deal with the needs of the people, and therefore the more one identifies with the plight of others, nosim be'ol chavero, as we say in Hebrew, the more he is fitting to be a king. Unbelievable, words of wisdom. The role of a king is to deal with the needs of the people, and therefore the more he identifies with the plight of others, the more he is fitting to be a king. And I think this sort of just underscores everything we've been saying till now. A leader, a king, whatever, rabbi, president, right, board member, parent, right, community member. The bottom line is that we have to be nosin be'ol chavero. Those are the Hebrew words. What does it mean, nosin be'ol chavero? What does noseh mean? Noseh means to carry. That's the Hebrew word noseh. Noseh means to carry. But oel literally means a canopy, right? Oel. But ol chavero, with the canopy that's overhanging the person, right? We know we have this phrase. I have a black cloud over my head, right? I'm being weighed down, right, by all my difficulties. It's because the oel, the thing that's on top of me, right, it's pushing me down. And we have so many different things individually, community-wise, right, country-wise, right? We have so many things that are pushing us down. A good leader is there to lift that up and allow, and I'm saying adding on something because from the words of Nosim be'ol chavero, lifts up. He doesn't lift up the person so much. Of course he does. But what he's really doing is he's lifting up the oel, the thing that is pushing him down, and he alleviates the pain, he alleviates all the pressure, and then therefore allows the individual to be able to lift himself up. That's a leader. Right? That's a true leader. Right? A true leader takes off the oel, takes off that canopy, takes off that pain, helps out with that. And then, right, and then the person will be able to lift himself up. You know, we find this similar idea in the laws of tzedakah, the laws of charity. Now, I'll be the last one to say not to write a check, right, in the synagogue, to schools, to the kollel, to good organizations. Right, of course, go ahead and write a check, right? But there's a high level of charity, says the Talmud, and it's brought down in the Code of Jewish Law. Right? One of the highest levels of charity is getting someone a job. And one of the highest levels of charity is helping an individual with a skill. One of the highest levels of charity is not just throwing things at them and giving them help or money and this. And the highest level of charity is actually empowering the person, not just giving them steps. Again, of course, sometimes you need to do that. But the highest level of charity is to give the person the opportunity to get out of himself, to allow himself to grow, and to take off the struggles. So if the person needs to find a job, help them find a job. Right? The person needs a skill, help them with a skill. Right? The person needs to get out of himself, to get onto a dating site, right? Because he needs to find someone, so get that. Whatever it is, the person needs to have to talk to someone, to talk to them and allow them to come out of their pain, and then they could lift themselves up again. Sometimes they need a little help, a little money to lend, to start the business, things like that. But not to let people just to be reliant on other people. That's not true help. That's what it means, Nosabel. That's a leader. A leader looks for opportunities to help other people to get out of themselves, not to make other people reliant on you. Not to make other people reliant on you and then they owe you favors and then now you can ask back for the favors. That's back to the other kind of leader. That's a leader that's for himself, right? And always looking to build himself up and have people owing him favors and this and that, and then he has to call the favors, right? And you vote for me and this and that, or make sure you stand in my corner during this. A true leader is looking for opportunities to help the person get on his own 2 feet, that he doesn't need you anymore. Doesn't need you anymore. I remember speaking to my father once, and I remember the whole situation. It was a couple of years ago, but he was telling me that one of his greatest success stories as a teacher, as helping and an educator, was when the student or whatever situation it was that someone needed his help, and didn't need his help anymore. I had to call up maybe once in a while to ask for advice. But it wasn't a constant day in, day out help anymore. The greatest thing was that when the person was able to get on his own 2 feet. What parent wants their child to be reliant on them the whole life? You want your kid to be able to be successful and be on their own 2 feet. Of course, a parent always wants their kid to ask them advice if they need it. But, parent doesn't want their child to ask them 24/7, like when they're younger. Because they want to teach them the skills to get out of within themselves. That's a leader. That's leadership. That's the same thing in any situation that you are. If you're a parent, you're a friend, don't make your friend reliant on you. It sometimes feels good. You're always helping your friend and they're talking to you and they're calling you and you feel good about it. It's true. But try to get a situation where your friend is able to help themselves. Hopefully they'll continue to talk to you. It'll be about other things, about how successful they are and this and that, or how things are going well. Same thing in the congregation, same thing as a teacher, same thing, whatever. One of the greatest is when someone tells me, Rabbi, I'm ready to move on to the next step. And we don't need to learn this anymore. That's success. That's leadership. And that's what we always have to focus on, to try to help other people get out from under themselves, not to make them reliant on you. That is, as it says, the Alter from Kelm. A leader is someone that identifies the plight of others, right? Nosim be'ol chavero, and then the more he recognizes that, the more fitting he is to be a leader. Something unbelievable. But I think the most powerful thing is, yes, recognizing it, but how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it? It's unbelievable. Okay, so let's move on to another idea. We're doing good timing over here. Let's move on to another idea. There's another idea that I saw that we find from Moshe Rabbeinu, and I'll read you the words I saw quoted, right? Says that Moshe, as an individual, Moshe is an individual who is incapable of standing idle by while an injustice is being perpetrated. Right? Moshe, however, however the consequences may fact, he nevertheless feels obligated to act and undo and correct the injustice. He is a man in a place where there are no men. And he always recognizes such a situation. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu was not able to stand idle when injustice happened. Where do we find this? Right? It says when Moshe went out to his brothers and he saw Ish Mitri hitting the man, right? He says, "What are you doing?" Right? And he helps him out. He comes back the next day and he saw one Jew hitting the other. He says, "Why are you hitting your friend?" He stood up. And the guy said, "Oh, what are you going to take care of me like you took care of the Egyptian?" Moshe Rabbeinu had to run away. And then again, when he saw the daughters of Slavchad, daughter of Yisroi, right, being taken advantage of by the well, right? We see again over there, right, that he stood up for the injustice, and he said, "Hey, what's going on over here?" Right, and he helped them out. They said, "Oh, Ish Mitri helped us out." That's what they said. So we see, right, that throughout Moshe always stood up for the injustice. Right? Moshe always stood up for when things were not going right. And that is, again, another sign of a leader. But how did Moshe stand up? How did Moshe take care of it? Moshe took care of it, right, through words. Moshe took care of it through trying to make sure that the situation was taken care of. And when the situation taken care of, he moved on. He moved on. And that's something that we all have to reflect on and say, we have to find when there's injustice, but we also have to move on, right? And let things happen and to allow things to play its role. Allow things to play its role. Because when you keep on beating the same horse, eventually the horse dies. If you keep on pushing and pushing, eventually you lost what you gained. Because that means to say that you're not really there for the cause. You're there for yourself. Back to that point. There for yourself. You really care about the injustice. Injustice was taken care of. You made a difference. Now, let's heal. Now let things heal. And let it heal based on what you took care of things. Made a point. Let things heal. You don't let things heal, it's going to get more and more fractured, and you're doomed. And everything's doomed. You know, it's I don't want to be very careful with my words. It's a very hot topic, but I think it's something that we all have to think about. There's a lot of pain out there, and we all have to be with everybody's pain, and a lot of pain all around, in many aspects. But we have to care for all injustice, not just one, and an injustice that follows people's narrative. All injustice that's happening, and we have to identify it, and we have to talk about it. But at the same time, we also have to let the advocacy and the things that we've done to try to fix the injustice. We have to give it time to heal also. And that's an important lesson we learn from Moshe. Right? We learn from Moshe this idea. We learn from Moshe that you have to stand up for all injustice. It doesn't make a difference if it was a Mitri. It doesn't make a difference if it was a foreigners that he didn't know that had no political or anything. It didn't make a difference if it was, right, his own countryman. Whatever, whoever it was, anytime. Right? Moshe always stood up for the injustice. And for all injustice, because there's no injustice that's not injustice. But at the same time, then took care of the problem, and he moved on. That's a very important thing that we have to remember. And I want to conclude with this beautiful idea that we find about leadership. And I think something also very, very important to remember and to reflect, to remind ourselves when we're talking about leadership. And if we want to be leaders, and as we mentioned in the introduction to the class, that everybody's a leader in one way or another. Well, Moshe Rabbeinu was speaking. God told him, That's Moshe, you're not going to the Holy Land. Sorry, right? Ain't gonna happen, right? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, God, but I want you to please find a leader that's going to be good for the Jewish people, right? Please find a leader that's be good for the Jewish people. What did he say? He said like this: "Vaydaber Moshe el Hashem leimor, yivkod Hashem elokei ruchos l'chol bas is al ha'eda." Let the omnipower God of all living souls appoint a man over the community. Says Rashi, right? Why does it say God of all the living souls? No, duh, of course God is the God of all the living souls. So why does it say the God of all the living souls? What does that mean? Right? So says Rashi something very powerful. Right? Says Rashi, right? Moses said before God, the personalities of each individual is revealed before you, and they do not resemble each other. Appoint for them a leader who will be able to hear each individual according to his or her personality. Moshe Rabbeinu was telling us the secret of a good leader, the secret of how we are supposed to look at everything. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying like this: God, you know that there's so many different personalities out there. God, you know that there's so many people with so many different ways of thinking, so many people with so many different ways of reflecting on things. People that are a little more nervous this way, people a little more easygoing. There were people that are concerned about this, people that are not concerned about that, people that just their personality, their ways of looking at things, concerned about things. And then moving it more to our generation that think this is right and that's right. God, you know that you made each person different. So make sure, at least when you get a leader for the Jewish people, that you appoint for them a leader who will be able to bear each individual according to his personality. Not try to make everybody conform to one way, because it is not one way. Not trying to make every person a robot and say, oh, this way or the highway. But have a leader that understands that there's different ways. Try to work with each individual. But I have to say this also. Each individual has to realize that they're an individual. That there's also other people that think differently. And the second that individual doesn't realize that, right, then we start falling into problems, right, of different stories in the Torah where we have individuals that went ahead and fought against the Torah, fought against Moshe, and it never ended up well. Moshe reached out to them and reached them, but eventually he said, hey, I tried. You can't save every person if the person himself doesn't want to be saved. And a person has to realize that they're also an individual amongst a community of different individuals. We have to have a core value that unites us. We spoke about this in the Morning Minute one time regarding the Mishkan, that each tribe had their own flag, they had their own direction and way of connecting with God, but it was all around the Mishkan. It was with a nucleus together, but still each one had their own way. And that is a leader. A leader identifies and recognizes that there are different individuals. And you try to accommodate everybody. Unfortunately, sometimes it's almost impossible. But you have to try. And you have to be sensitive to every person. But we can't forget that individuals also have to realize that they're individuals. And there's many different people out there. And that is one of Moshe Rabbeinu's greatest talents, being able to identify and to work with each leader, with each community, and work and try to get them to come together and to unite. And he gathered the Jewish people together. Unfortunately, again, there were individuals that didn't want that. And as we mentioned, wasn't a good ending. But that is something that we all have to connect with and realize. We have to try to work with each individual, and not to say the other person has to work with us. Because a leader, and if we all recognize that we are leaders in our community, that we're leaders in our household, we are leaders in our society, if we are leaders in our country, then we all have to try to work with the other person. And not that the other person has to work with us. Then we'll be able to get together. If we all look ourselves as the leader, we have to try to work with the other person, then you have a community. Then you have a functioning society. But the second that each person thinks that the other person has to work with me, because no, they have to work with me. Look, they're the leader. They have to work with me, right? Look what we said. Moshe has to find a leader that everybody has to work with. The second every person thinks that the other person's the one that has to work with me, then we have anarchy. Then we don't have a society. Then we're never going to work together. We're never going to have a cohesive and working together group, because each person thinks that the other person has to work together with them. So we all have to realize that we are leaders, one way or another. Some of us are not the ones that are making the decisions all the time. That's correct. And some of us are not the ones sitting on the dais or on the board or on this or on that. That is correct. But we all have leadership qualities within ourselves. We all have to realize that for us to be a community, we all have to have a certain level of leadership. We have to be sensitive to other people, right? We have to get our feet and hands wet and put ourselves out there like Moshe did. And not to say, well, leave other people, let's get other people to do it. No, but actually be involved. We have to be, we have to realize, right, that, like as we said, right, the Moshe Rabbeinu, right, didn't want to be the leader, right? It wasn't running after it. That humbleness. We have to realize that, as we said from the altar from Kelm, that a leader, right, is someone that is no sebel chaver, tries to alleviate the pain from other people, not to just enable them, or God forbid, put more pain on them. But a no sebel chaver is someone that is trying to relieve the pain, help take the oil off other people. That is a leader. A leader, as we said, is someone that stands up for injustice. Someone that recognizes and says, I'm going to take care of this, but at the same time recognizes that when the injustice is taken care of and spoken about, to move on and allow things to heal. A leader is someone, as we just said, is someone that recognizes, right, that every person is different. And these are the different character traits of Moshe Rabbeinu. There's many more, right? But these are some of the character traits of Moshe Rabbeinu that made him one of the greatest leader of all time. Who God said that I'm going to talk to him because he was able to look at the plight of his brothers and get himself out of his comfort zone and not to keep himself on his high horse in his palace. That he's the one I want to talk to, upon him, face to face. So my blessing to all of us is, and let's learn from this. If we all work on our own leadership skills and try to be better leaders in our community, try to be better people through being better leaders and mimic some of these character traits of Moshe, I promise you that we will heal much quicker internally in our community, our families, our friends, our city, our country, because we will be trying to help the other person out. We'll try to take off that yoke like a good king, like a good leader. We'll realize that we're all different, but not that the other person has to conform to me, but we have to try to work together with the other person. And we will fight for injustice, but at the same time, allow it to heal and allow things to move forward and get our feet wet. So let's all try to work on this. I'm talking to myself, and try to be a little more sensitive to other people, try to help them with their problems, and realize that every person is different. We all have different views. But not that the other person has to be like me. We all have to try to work together. Thank you all for joining us today. And I'm going to end now the recording.